Welcome to the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Today, my guest is Deidre Gordon. Deidre is a mental health counselor in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with special training and skill in working with individuals, groups, and communities to improve mental health dysfunctions by discussing emotions and experiences, then prescribing custom holistic solutions. Stick around. I want to introduce her to you. Hi, Deidre. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for joining us on the Vegan Pulse today. The first thing that I want to talk about is how you came to veganism.
Okay. It wasn't this profound story that I hear other people say. I already didn't really like milk or eggs. Like I would cook with them, but for me to drink a glass of milk was absolutely out of the question. I don't like honey, don't like fish, allergic to seafood. So all of those things are already in place. And so as I started thinking about things, there were certain types of meat that I was like, oh, they're all right. But then as I started to grow and learn more, I was like, this is actually really nasty. And even the meats that I did eat, like as I would clean them before I'd cook them, I couldn't eat them the next day. And I'm like, then why am I eating these at all? Clearly it's something that I have to like mentally force myself to do, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I just think that, I thought I have to cut all of this out. If it's causing me this much angst and this much anxiety just to eat this stuff, I shouldn't be eating it. And so that's how it began. I've definitely evolved through the process, and I now understand about speciesism and advocating for animals who can't advocate for themselves. And so I guess it was a journey then. Yes, that's how I came to veganism.
And it's funny that you say that, because when you were saying that, I was thinking about, when I used to cook meat, that I would see the veins and the skin, and I'd be like, and I didn't really make the connection. And meanwhile, I was making those faces that is like, this is gross, this is, grosser. And yet I still cooked it because, just like you, that was what we've been taught.
Right.
And it makes a good point to the fact that perhaps there are other people out there who feel the same way, where they think, this is not really, why am I doing this? I don't like this, I don't like that. But they do it because it's the so-called normal thing to do. Would you
Or they
agree?
feel like they have to have it. And, I get that a lot, the answer of, oh, I could never go vegan, or I have to have meat, or I'll die without meat. And I'm like, here I am living happily and healthy. My mom just asked me yesterday, actually, about me being a vegan. And she was like, did you lose weight? And I'm like, no, I didn't do it to lose weight. And I said, I wasn't eating, too horribly before. I said, I just had to, knock out a few things to get me to where I am now. And then she's like, well, what about your numbers and your health testing and those kind of things? And I was like, oh, those are fabulous. When I go in, they tell me my cholesterol they use the word perfect, but I know it's not perfect. It's just great. Um, all my scores are very, very well. And I'm in the great range and the healthy range and those kind of things, which I've been talking to her about, because her and my dad's numbers are not so great. And I always talk to them about what they're eating and those kind of things.
For me, the same thing. When I've gone to the doctor, is like, they'll say, oh, your numbers are like for a person half your age. Everything looks good. Although it's not perfect, it looks good. Right. So I understand that. And it's so hard for people not to or rather, it's so hard for people to understand that what we're talking about and what we're trying to spread the message about is about being healthier. It is about helping the planet so future generations have a livable planet. And also, it's about the atrocities that the poor animals suffer because someone decided some time ago and then fooled the rest of the world into saying that we had to eat another's flesh.
Right. Or walk around with another's flesh on our shoulder in a bag or whatever. I just need something to put my stuff in. It definitely does not have to be, nor does it better be leather. Like I don't need that in my life.
Especially if you kind of like that look, there's so many faux options out there that you don't have to take somebody else's skin. You definitely wouldn't want someone to skin you, right?
Exactly.
Just like in the entertainment business, where I have to tell you that the first time I went and the last time that I went to a rodeo was when I first got here to New Mexico. And I wasn't vegan at the time, but I went to the rodeo because my boss brought me there. It was at the fair. And I sat there, and as soon as I saw that calf being roped, I'm like, okay, this is not for me. I mean, who is getting joy out of this? That poor calf. How would you like somebody to put a rope around your legs and then pull it from under you and you smack down onto the ground face first? I mean, that's not sport. That's cruelty. That's torment.
Absolutely.
And then people don't, again, get the connection because this is what has been labeled by someone who wanted to make money at the expense of somebody else's soul. Right. Oh, come see this because this is fun, without taking into account who is it fun for.
Exactly. I had a conversation with a friend of mine because she asked if I was going to do the run for the zoo, because normally we would do that every year. And I told her, no, I'm not doing that again. I told you, like, I'm done with Run for the Zoo. She was like, well, how come? And I'm like, hello, vegan here. We're not supporting the zoo. And she was like, but they use that money to feed the animals. Oh, well. And she's like, well, how are they going to feed the animals? I was like, maybe they should leave them alone and where they are in their natural habitat. Then they won't have to worry about feeding the animals. And I was like, I understand where you're trying to go, but I'm not going to support it. Like, no.
Exactly. And that's because I've had, someone ask me, will you go to the aquarium? No. Will you go to the zoo? No. Anywhere that there is animal exploitation, I'm not interested. I'm interested in ending that, is what I'm interested in. So will I go and protest? Yes. Will I go to support it? Absolutely not. And I urge everyone who's vegan to do the same. Do not support it for any reason.
Yeah.
If somebody says, well, the kids don't get to see the animals, take them to a sanctuary. Take them to a wildlife refuge. Take them someplace where it's actually a place of compassion rather than a place of exploitation.
Right. And that has taken me a while to get to that point also. Because I was like, okay, well, the animals are already there. Let's go visit. And then I was like, I'm the worst zoo partner ever because I'm complaining. I'm talking to the people like, well, why did you take them from their natural habitat? And I was like, I just need to stop going to the zoo because I realize that other people are there for a reason. And I'm there to find answers and try to educate people on why this is not okay.
This year, at the end of the year, I went to the zoo. I swore I'd never go to the zoo, but I went there because I was kind of trying to find some answers for some things that were happening at the zoo. And it was a sad day for me. I was in tears when I saw with new eyes what a zoo really is. It's a prison, and they don't give him enough space to even roam or walk. And it is so sad. And you could see the stress in the animals when they're moving back and forth and they can't find anything to do with themselves. or they may be sedated because obviously they're just not in their natural habitat. And I thought, how sad and how depressing and how wrong this is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
And then there's people there torturing them, and it's just so sad. And historically, back in the day, Black people used to be zoo exhibits. And so it just takes it to another level for me, also being an advocate for social justice as well.
exactly. And just like you said, that you hear about all these, like the traveling circuses and things like that, where they just exploited whoever they could by making them an attraction. And that is so wrong in so many levels and in so many ways that you just have to think about with a new perspective. Like, is this something, I always say this, would this be something that you would like done to you? Right. Or your child, or your mother, or your father, or your sister, or your brother? And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't do it to any other living being. It doesn't matter who they are, where they come from, what species, what race, what nationality, what religion. It's just not right.
I agree.
So
don't get me started on circuses. They are the worst.
They are, and what we have to do is re-educate everyone into what things really are, and not that. I tell my partner John this: it's like the emperor and his new clothes, right? The tailor told him he had clothes on, but he was butt naked. But the king believed it, and he went out there, and out in the crowd, everyone wanted to believe it, even though they didn't see it, because they didn't want to be, away from the norm of everybody else accepting it. And so that's what we have to do. We have to be that, like, the little kid that said, he's got no clothes on. And that's what we have to call out all of these things for what they are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
so
that's a really good point, because I hear a lot of people when they come to me and they're saying, oh, do you have any vegan recipes? And I'm like, just tell me what you eat, and then I can tell you how to veganize it. Like, don't go looking for new recipes. It's going to be stressful. It's something out of your norm. Like, if you want to, you can, of course. I said, but I feel like a more natural transition is tell me what you eat and what you put in it, and then we can swap out things to veganize it.
That is a great idea. And that is a great way to look at it and move forward. I think I'm going to steal that from you. Tell me what you eat, and let's veganize it instead. Don't look for a new recipe, like you said. Let's just take what you eat already. So that way we could keep it, on a level that you will be comfortable with, instead of, not knowing and then stressing because you're looking for a recipe and you don't know how to make it. And it's much easier to do what you just said. Good. I like that. Good tip.
You know where I got that tip from, Nancy? You in your cooking class. So you're not stealing it from me. You're taking it back.
Thanks, which I hope will start again in May.
Okay. Yay.
Oh, now, tell us, I know that you are a secretary for Sprouting Compassion. You also volunteer for Red and Green Veg Fest, and you are a supporter of Cooking with Compassion. I thank you for all of that. But tell us what else you have going on that promotes veganism.
I am a therapist, a family therapist. I work with middle school students and high school students and their families. And the students are at risk of being removed from the home due to their behavior. I promote veganism in that way because I do provide them with healthy options and those type of things. When we're talking in therapy, I work inside of their home. And so I see their day-to-day living and those kind of things. And so when they ask me for the advice, I definitely give them my vegan advice when solicited. And in interventions, I ensure that I'm giving them interventions that are going to be I guess, harm reduction type interventions.
And with so many studies now that what you eat affects your behavior, your mental stability. And so not only your health, but all of that, kudos to you for being one of those counselors who is able to see that and implement that to help others, because it's so important. It's like when you go to a doctor and they don't tell you, here, you need to try to diet change to see if we could, help with your diabetes or your heart disease. They don't say that. So kudos to you, because in your field as a counselor, you know these things to be true. There's plenty of medical scientific data to support that, and that you are incorporated. And that's what we need. People who are in these fields to also know the benefits of whole food, plant-based vegan diet.
Yes. And I'm also a distributor of essential oils. And so I incorporate that into my practice as well. When I first started as a therapist, a lot of my clients were on medication. Now I've noticed there's a trend towards, I don't want my kid on medication, which is great for me because I don't want their kid on medication either. And so when we agree on things like that, I'd like to give them the options of, I have these essential oils and I give it to my clients for free, for them to, use those as far as getting through day-to-day things, whereas they're not looking for medications or those kind of artificial things.
So that's another kudos to you, because so many people are so easy to go, what's wrong with you? Here, take this pill. Go take that pill. And there's too many doctors, too many therapists, too many of those people giving out medication instead of starting with a look at what they're eating and starting to help them incorporate a plant-based diet, vegan plant-based diet.
That's correct. And I understand, medication, if you need them and they're there and they work for you, great. I'm not saying don't ever take medication, but I do encourage people to explore other options first.
Yes, and I concur with that. I'm not saying don't ever take medication either. I'm just saying that Dr. Joel Kahn, Dr. Neil Bernard, all of them have had patients or spoken about people who have had heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and other ailments where they've adapted a whole food plant-based diet and then either lowered their medications or got off of them completely.
Absolutely.
Medications are expensive.
They are.
And so that is another point to make, is that when you're talking about this, that obviously whole food plant-based vegan diet is not a miracle cure-all, obviously, but it can help you and your family and your colleagues and your friends feel a heck of a lot better. So any last words that you want to put out to the audience?
I think it's important to say, because I mentioned my parents earlier, and I always get on them about how they eat. I was their caregiver, like in their home for quite a few years. And although they couldn't all the way, well, they didn't want to, let's be real, all the way give up meat and those kind of things. When I would cook for them, I only cooked vegan things for them. And so when I would hear my mom say, oh, I just couldn't eat vegan food, I would joke with her and be like, really? Because you don't eat apples? Like, stop. But also I would let her know, like, remember, I cook your food. Please know that I'm not out here using animal products in your food. So you're already doing it. Just take away all the stuff that you add after I cook and you're fine. And so I do want to say that just be patient with people, because I have noticed, my dad will ask me like, well, can you make this for me? And so he clearly knows it's going to be a vegan dish and he's asking for it. And I don't ever tell people no when they ask me to make them a vegan dish. because I feel like that's one step closer. And even if they're not to the point where they can do it for 7 days or as a lifestyle, if they just start with that one day, then maybe they'll do 2 days and then 3 days and just take it one day at a time.
Awesome. That is awesome advice. Thank you so much for being on the show. And we'll talk to you again.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on another Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Remember to follow us on Facebook, check out our website, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have a pulse, you have a purpose. Live vegan.